Factory data in February grew at 4.1%, a lot slower than what the market was expecting. But what's really shocked the market is the revision that's been made to the January data. IIP growth has been lowered from 6.8% to a mere 1.1%. And this is now raising some serious questions on the credibility of data being put out by the government. ET Now's Suchetna Ray reports on this.
Growth engines are slowing down, and so is the optimism around revival of the Indian economy. Industrial growth for February at 4% is much below all estimates. The big laggard continues to be manufacturing, which grew at 4%. Industrial production was further weighed down by a contraction in consumer durables. But the one big reason which threw all calculations out of the window is the pace of expansion in January, which was revised sharply downwards from 6.8% to 1.14% today. Raising serious questions on the credibility of this crucial monthly data, the chief statistician blames correction on erroneous sugar output data.
We are in the process of setting up an expert group to suggest a revision of the index, which will be looking at issues of base year as well as the system of data collection. If it is feasible and technically possible, the group will make suitable recommendations.
But the data, notorious for its volatility, makes policy making a tough job. And that is perhaps why even policymakers now assert on the need for revamping the process of data collection and also assessment.
The numbers indicate that the industrial production has not yet picked up. We really need to tighten the various sources from which the data are collected.
In fact, top sources, even in the Chief Statistics Office, believe IIP isn't the most reliable data and should not be banked upon.
It's a colossal blunder and not the kind that any government can afford. Little wonder that market participants have not only just started ignoring the data but also started questioning its very existence. Should North Block not swing into action sooner than later? Suchetna Ray, ET Now, New Delhi.
Okay, to get us more understanding on that particular story, ET Now's banking editor George Cherian joins us now for that perspective. George, a huge revision in the January number. Why this big change? And don't you think that it's high time that the government reviewed data collection methods then?
Some of the other components of the IIP were a little surprising, if you will. For instance, food and beverages came in at a growth of 92.5%. You had Zarda, chewing tobacco, gutka, that category growing at something like 127% in the last month. So there were already huge question marks around the previous month's data, that's January. There was an expectation that it would be revised downwards, but the sharp revision, of course, was surprising. Now, for the month of February, again, if you look at the internals of the index, capital goods has grown by something like a 10.6%. But looking closer at that number, you will find that machine tools have grown by something like 114% in the month of February. And that immediately raises eyebrows, because in a month where you are seeing production slow, you are seeing huge issues in terms of manufacturing output, you tend to ask the question how it is that machine tools have actually grown, rather doubled. At the same time, consumer durable growth has contracted by something like 6.7%. Within that, if you look at color picture television tubes, that's contracted by 100%. So huge variations in these internals, which sort of tends to throw up the question as to whether the February number will also be revised. We don't know as yet, but it does seem like it will be revised, but hopefully not to the extent that we saw the January number being revised.
Now let's get your reactions to the IIP data from bankers, economists and market men.
The numbers are pretty much all over the place, so I wouldn't kind of put reliance, and the market itself gives the heads up. Within 5-10 minutes they start kind of going back to where they were, because people don't really rely on these numbers. There's a huge trust deficit. If you go out and ask any industrialist, all of them are saying that we don't want to invest anymore because there's no clarity.
The revision in itself shows a very bad statistical issues, even with compiling of data. I don't know, that's a serious credibility issue. RBI governor has been saying that the data quality is not what can become really on which they can take decisions or policy decisions.
These numbers are very volatile, they're not very dependable, and they're swinging by huge amounts. And the scary part is it can swing on either side. We do think that the RBI will have to ease liquidity and cut rates. It will hopefully lead to a transmission of monetary policy through the economy.